Matrix, William Miranda.
And welcome to the Paradigm Matrix with my special guest, Roy Teague. Roy, how are you?
I'm good. It's great to be on the show. Thank you for having me.
Roy, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, certainly. First of all, despite what the internet says, I'm still a serving police officer. I have not retired. I read a lot on the internet that I've retired. I haven't. So I'm a British police officer. I hold the rank of police inspector, and I've done so for about 8 years. And just to explain the rank structure, you start off as a police constable, then the next rung on the promotion ladder is sergeant, and then after that it's inspector. Prior to the police, I was in the army for 6 years. Once I left the police and military service, I have served in 2 Home Office police forces. The first one was Surrey Police for 4.5 years. And now I currently serve in the West Midlands Police, which is the second largest police force in the United Kingdom. Obviously, the Metropolitan Police in London being the largest. So I've got a combined total of 27 years police service, all frontline on sort of 999 response teams, proactive teams, and the Firearms Operations Unit in West Midlands. And when I was on the Firearms Operations Unit, I was responsible for running a couple of teams with AFOs on them, which is Authorised Firearms Officer. I was one of those myself, and so I would deploy on a daily basis in an armed response vehicle to spontaneous firearms incidents, such as there's a bank robbery in progress or there's a guy in the street with a gun. And I was also, because of my rank, a tactical firearms commander, and I would deal with deciding whether armed officers would be deployed to firearms incidents. And those incidents, again, would have been spontaneous incidents, like there's somebody in the street with a shotgun, or there's an armed robbery taking place. But I also would deal with some of the covert type of armed police operations involving surveillance and plainclothes assets. So a high degree of training, and I would suggest that between deploying to firearms incidents, assessing them and planning them, I've been involved directly in over 1,000 firearms deployments, which is a very high number. So I'm quite experienced in the world of firearms deployments in the United Kingdom. Now, from a personal point of view, I pride myself on having a career that has kept me away from pointless police project work sat behind a desk, pointless meetings at headquarters, and pointless silly policing politics. The 3 most important things in the world of policing, according to myself, Inspector Teague, are the following. Number 1, protecting the public, and I mean keeping good, honest people safe in their beds at night. The second is locking up proper criminals. And when I say proper criminals, I don't mean somebody who hasn't got a seatbelt on when he's driving, or talking on a mobile phone. Although, yes, I would deal with those, but I like dealing with proper criminals. I like arresting robbers, burglars and car thieves, real proper crims. And third, which is very important to me, I really do like to look after and back up the officers I have the high honour of leading. That is my policing footprint and ethos in a nutshell. Very simple. So now I guess you know who I am and where I'm coming from.
Now, you also served in the military, correct?
I did serve in the military, yes, for 6 years. I went to Northern Ireland, did a tour of Northern Ireland and a tour of Bosnia in the Balkans, but that was a long time ago.
So you've been deployed out there also. Wow. Wow. Now, as far as police work and your years still in the force, have you seen what's been one of the significant changes as far as technology has been concerned? Has it been, a big one as far as, surveillance is concerned, with cameras and of course the information age that we live in, where you're able to access all this information so quickly. Has it been a godsend or a huge advantage? As far as has it made their job a little easier?
Yeah, I mean, one of the sound bites in the police is that intelligence is the lifeblood of policing, and that is true to an extent, because if we don't know about something, we can't deal with it. So our intelligence departments are very good. There's a difference between information and intelligence. Information is somebody will ring in and say, I think this is happening X, Y, Z. And then when we look at the information, we will sanitize it. We'll see how credible it is. And at the end of it, that information then becomes intelligence. But I'd say, yeah, it's improved greatly over the years. We've got more people working on intelligence departments. So we're trying to stay one step ahead of organised crime groups, urban street gangs. But definitely there's been an improvement. I think the biggest change to policing especially in the last 5 years, is the scrutiny. Because everywhere you go now, somebody has a mobile phone.
Yes.
There's auditors everywhere. that in a lot of cases know the law better than the officer when it comes to, offences of trespass or filming in public or where they can and cannot go. And I find there's a lot more scrutiny with police with phones basically put in their faces every day, put onto social media like Facebook, YouTube. It's a tough business to be in at this point in time, especially, and I don't want to get into it, but when an officer makes a mistake and there's some bad publicity against an officer or a police force or a department, the entire 43 police forces across, the United Kingdom suffer for it. It's almost like, well, that officer's made a mistake and it's gone viral all over the internet. So all officers are bad and they've made a mistake. So we all get tarred with the same brush. It's very frustrating because if you went to get your car fixed at by a mechanic and he did a bad job, the whole country would not say that all mechanics are bad. They would just say, hey, that mechanic's terrible. And even then, he might really be a good mechanic. He just might have had a bad day. I find in the police are hung, drawn and quartered by the media and certain sections of the community that dislike us. And I don't think a lot of people recognise the job, as we call it. We don't say the police, we call it the job.
Mm-hmm.
And people, I don't think until they've walked a mile in a police officer's shoes, understand how difficult it can be sometimes. You're going out every day, you're dealing with violent criminals, people that hate you, will do anything to get away at all costs, whether that's causing you injury, using a vehicle against you or a weapon, and you're doing it unarmed, without a firearm. And we're the only country to do that. And I think we're trying to hang on by our fingernails to that unarmed policing model at any cost. Personally, I think that should change, but I don't get to make those decisions. Yeah. So the biggest change in policing is the scrutiny that we have been under in the last 5 years.
I believe it's the same here. Also, in this country, as far as the scrutiny and being under a microscope, and we live in a society now where, like you said,
it's a tough job. It's a tough job,
yes,
Willie.
Yes, it is. It is. And I believe it's one of the most dangerous jobs also because I believe anybody who wears a uniform is in danger, because it can be easily confused, by a law enforcement official, So anybody who's out there doing a job, for, let's say, a municipality, okay?
Yeah.
Like here, a town or city, municipality, it's a dangerous job for anybody who wears a uniform.
I think people could appreciate a little bit more that police officers are human. They make mistakes too, just like anybody else. They've got fathers, mothers, sons, daughters, someone's brother or sister, and they make mistakes because they're human. And sometimes I think we could be cut a little bit more of a break than what the media gives us.
Portrays. Yep,
just
portrays. Yep. No. I share the same opinion. Roy, I wanted to know how. I know you got your book, Close Encounters of the Police Kind, and what brought you into this, to write this book and also to investigate and look into these reports, especially with police officers who have served or have retired or have moved on.
I can tell you where the journey started. So I've always been interested from a very young age in UFOs, the paranormal, things that go bump in the night, just generally anything in relation to the unexplained. And it's always been there on the back burner for me. But it wasn't until, I think it was 2016, I came home from a late shift and I caught a documentary called UFOs and Nukes. And it was a documentary about how unidentified flying objects had been seen over the top of American bases that contained nuclear missiles, and those UFOs rendered those ICBMs, those intercontinental ballistic missiles, inoperable and they couldn't be launched. And there were a lot of witnesses, and then I did some research, found out this had happened in Russia and China and other countries, throughout sort of around the globe. And I thought, well, why would these servicemen make this up? I don't think they would. And then I started thinking that how credible they were as witnesses. And then I thought, well, what makes a credible witness? And then I thought, well, surely by virtue of the training, police officers. So I started doing some digging, and I then started to collate UFO accounts from serving and former police officers and put them together. And it just literally, it exploded from there. And that's what I've probably been doing now for the last 5 or 6 years. And that's basically how I got started. And it's really grown for me, and it's become quite a passion and something that, takes up a lot of my extra time outside of my police duties.
Since you're still on the job, now what has been one of the most fascinating cases that has really stuck with you? out of the many cases, has there been one case that has really stood in front?
I mean, I interviewed over 250 former and serving police officers, that's quite a lot. So to say, does any one case stand out? I'd say there's several that stand out, but I interviewed an officer. He wanted to remain anonymous, so I can't give his name, but he served in Police Scotland, and he was outside of a police station in Arboyne, and he was just about to leave the driveway of the police station, and a call came in on the radio saying there's a report that something is in the sky coming from the direction of Aberdeen, which was to the east. And we had several calls. Can you see anything? So he's there. He jumps on his radar and says, yeah, I'll have a look. So he puts the mic back down into the car. He stood in the A-frame of the car door frame at the time. And he looks over to his right towards the east. He notices, he doesn't see anything in the sky, but he notices what he calls a rolling power cut coming from his right-hand side, where the lights of all the houses are going out, and it's coming towards him, and the street lampposts are going out. And then eventually it goes all the way out to the lamppost near him and his car. Then that lamppost goes out. Then his police car dies, at which point he and the other police officer he's with, because he was with somebody else, they both look up in the sky, and a huge triangular craft, about 60 metres by 60 by 60, perfect triangle, glides effortlessly over their heads. And this is 1978, okay? So we might have things like that now because we're a clever species and we've very quickly advanced in our aircraft. And I believe we do have triangular craft now that we're working on, but I don't think we did in 78. And we certainly didn't have craft that size that could glide about 50 metres up in the air, that made no noise whatsoever and had no signs of propulsion like afterburners or jets. There was absolutely nothing. And this thing flew over his head, and he watched as it flew off to the west. And it continued this rolling blackout as it went across from his police station. But as it continued on its journey, the lights and the houses that it was now no longer over, the lights came back on, at which point the lampposts and his car then come back on. He's then grabbed his mic and said, I don't know what that thing is, but it's just passed over my head. To which the operator said to him, where have you been? We've been trying to get hold of you for 30 minutes. Now, he said he doesn't remember being taken, but so maybe time just in regards to that specific craft moves slower when you're around it. We don't know. Or maybe he was taken. However, that was in 78. And since then, he's had weird dreams where there's small people around his bed. He starts to get headaches. And he went last year to a doctor, and he had to hospital, and he had an MRI. And the doctor said, you've got something behind your right eye. It's cylindrical in shape, and it's a piece of metal, and it's behind your right eye. But because it's not affecting your vision, we're not going to take it out. So he said, that was from a coal fight, believe it or not, he had with his sister when he was a kid. They were throwing lumps of coal at each other, and he remembers the piece of coal hitting him in the side of the head. And he has always believed, because there's a little scar there, that the lump behind his eye was a piece of the coal. So he said to his sister, hey, do you remember that coal fight we had? Well, a piece of the coal has been detected behind my right eye. And she said, what coal fight? We've never had one. He said, well, yeah, we did, and we've spoken about it loads of times throughout our lives. And she said, we've never spoken about it. So he believes that these memories have been implanted in him.
Yes.
So he doesn't question too deeply where the scar came from and whatever it is behind his right eye. So he's always believed it's a piece of coal from the coal fight. And he remembers specifically talking to his sister about it, and she said, we never have. So he thinks, so he's had not only this awesome UFO sighting in 78, but he thinks that was a prelude to maybe being visited by non-human entities. And that in itself is also linked to whatever is behind his right eye, and whatever they are in that craft or others or whoever visited him. And bear in mind, this is his version of events, not mine. I'm just relaying what he said. And he believes that also the false memories of that incident, the coal fight, have been implanted into his head. So he hasn't questioned the scar or what's behind his head. That always does spring to mind. And that is one of many. As I say, I interviewed 250. But of course, I couldn't put all 250 in the book because of the size and the room. So I put the 75 most intriguing and perplexing cases in the book, of which that is one. But there are so many, Willie, there's so many. And every single one in that book is a serving or a former police officer. And it's never been done before. It's the first UK police anthology of UFO sightings involving police officers.
And it's fascinating, and I'm pretty sure some of these stories probably overlay them, and they're very, very similar. If you put them in an overlay, the missing time is very classic. And of course, the triangle craft back in the 70s, not surprising because I had co-workers who have told me in the early 70s encountering triangle crafts silent, okay, flying over. And, a lot of people try to say that these crafts appeared in the 80s, but no, back in the 70s, I've heard of reports of triangle crafts. So very consistent, Roy, very consistent. Now, has this person ever, have you had any cases where some of these police officers have gone into any type of regression?
No, I did ask one to go. The guy from our Boyne police station, he's just flatly refused. I think he's scared of what he's going to find out. And there was another police officer, him I can name, he's a PC Flanagan. He's knocking on a bit now, he's a bit old, but I've asked him and he's like, no, some things are best left unknown about. And he had the same when he was on the A14 near Cambridge, and he came round a bend in a road, and his wife is in the front of the car, his two children are in the back, and the dog, and they're all vocal as families are, chatting and talking. And he sees a huge cigar-shaped object, half above the road, half above a cornfield, about 50 foot up in the air. And he knows he's going to drive underneath it. And he's thinking, what the hell is that? And as he's looking at it, the thing just blinks out of existence in a millisecond. It doesn't shoot off. It doesn't slowly fade. It just, boom, it's gone. And he's looking above and it disappears. So he carries on down the road, and within about 15 seconds, no one in the car's talking, and he looks in the back seat, and his two children and his dog are unconscious, they're asleep, and his wife is asleep, slumped against the window. And he started to overcome it with severe tiredness. So he's had to pull into the next lay-by within about 30 or 40 seconds. And then he doesn't remember anything else. And he opens his eyes. He assumes it's been like a minute or two. He carries on his journey and he gets home. And about 2.5 hours, he's completely missing from his life. And he said to me, he knows that for 2.5 hours, his missing time was absolutely 100% to do with the object that he saw above the road. And again, this is me relaying what the officer is saying. I'm not saying that is the case, although you've got to ask yourself the question, why would he make that up? And why would the 250 other officers that I've interviewed just simply make up these stories? They can't all be wrong and they can't all be lying.
They got nothing to gain.
No, they haven't. They've got nothing to gain, everything to lose. And every single time I interview someone, I will always try to interview them in person. That is the gold standard, if you can interview somebody in person, because you can tell a lot about what someone's thinking and feeling when you look, a person in the eye. And if someone's being economical or stretching the truth, you can kind of pick it up with what I call NVCs, non-verbal communication. So, they can't look you in the eye. I'll ask them like the same question reworded a couple of times throughout the interview, and, to see if they change the story. I might say, oh, so when you were in your blue car, where did you go? And then 10 minutes later, I'll say, so this red car of yours, where did it go? And if they go, oh, well, we went over such and such, well, it was blue earlier, now it's red, and you haven't corrected me, and I'll note that. But I don't think I've tripped one up yet, because police, what have they got to gain? They've got nothing to gain by making these things up to me. So, but I asked that guy, would you consider doing that? Is it something you considered? And he said he considered it for all of 5 seconds, but he said to me again, he went, some truths are best left buried, and I don't want to know. That officer had a couple of experiences before, but that's his only missing time one. And the missing time ones are absolutely fascinating, aren't they? Because of the suggestion of what may have happened in that missing time that you can't remember. Where did you go? Why? Who took you? What did you see? Was anything done to you? Why can't you remember? I think they're fascinating.
Oh, it is. And one thing I agree with him with the regression, I think, is not for everybody. And sometimes I believe also when you go into regression, you might open up a can of worms, like they say here, and it's hard to put the genie back in the bottle,
It's tough. I mean, I feel honoured to be the one to tell the stories for these officers. And I can tell you now for a fact, the only reason my colleagues have broke the code of silence is because one of their own is asking the questions. In short, it's law enforcement asking law enforcement about what is a very taboo and difficult phenomena to talk about. And I think these things have been hidden behind the badge for decades. So it's an honour to bring them out and speak to them. And my hope and ask is that, you know, if anybody, as I'm sure they will, views this podcast, if anybody is serving or former law enforcement and they do want to get in contact with me, I'd love to chat with them. I have, Willie, actually extended now the criteria. So the criteria for the book, which you can see behind me, Close Encounters of the Police Kind, I've extended the criteria for the next book to include not just police, but emergency services such as the National Health Service, paramedics, the fire service, Coast Guard, and the military. So if anybody is former or serves in any of those organisations, obviously including the police, and they've had a UFO or paranormal or an unexplained experience and they want to contact me, I'd really like to hear from them if they could send me an email at royteague@blueyonder.co.uk. But a shameless advertising and request in there. It's really important for me to get these accounts, to put them into words. And my number one goal when I do that is so I can get them out there in the public eye so people can see, hang on a minute, this isn't just Joe the plumber or Fred the carpet fitter that is seeing these things. You've got sworn police officers that have had these experiences, people in the military, ambulance service, Coast Guard people, credible witnesses that by virtue of the training are very good and taught to observe and report. So the more I can get, the more I can get them into the public arena so that the subject of ufology and the paranormal becomes less taboo. And that is my number one goal. So if anyone's out there, do please get in touch with me.
And it's unfortunate that we still live in this day and age, 21st century, where there's still some pushback concerning this subject. As a matter of fact, I know that you're familiar with the Japan Airlines. I believe it was the cargo. It was a 747 that was flying over Alaska and it had an encounter. And I believe the captain of that plane was relegated to desk duty when he reported that. Because
this is the problem. People are scared of the ridicule and the stigma. That's the number one thing that officers have spoken to me about. So as of the 250 I interviewed, I'm amazed, but I probably had about 20 want to go anonymous. So I had to give them pseudonym names like Officer A, Officer B, Officer C, etc. Then I managed to persuade 9 of them to, you know, come on, go, you know, let's give you details. Let's give the story some credibility and bolster the belief when people read it. Because otherwise, I could be accused of, well, you've made up Officer A in the story and Officer B. So I want to get I want to name as many people as I can. And I managed of the 20 to persuade 9 to then give the details. So there's of the 250, only 11 are anonymous. So statistically and percentage-wise, I think that's not too bad at all. People are afraid of the stigma and the ridicule, and that's the number one reason why officers don't want to come forward. And it shouldn't be. It should be a subject that's treated with a sort of the respect that it deserves. I think it's got better because of all of the whistleblowing and the disclosure that's currently going on in the United States with the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Center.
Mm-hmm.
The releasing of the videos of UFOs that have been seen by the military, and the Pentagon have released that, and you've got, President Trump's authorised a lot of those to be released, which I think it can only be a good thing. So I think because of that, people speak more openly about it, but we've still got a long way to go.
Oh yes. I mean, I'm the same. I had an experience when I was at a very young age in Puerto Rico, and it took me until I was in my late 40s to talk about it. So yeah. It's not an easy thing when you have something that you can have an experience and you see something or go through something where you can't absolutely explain.
No, you can't.
And it's going to be even tougher for men and women who serve in uniform, whether it's military, whether it's EMS, or whether it's police officers, and pilots. You think, it's, but like you said, the stigma and the peer pressure, let's say, it's
well, you think that you will think, well, how is this going to affect my career?
Yes.
That's what people think.
Yeah.
I mean, from a personal point of view, now I've never seen a UFO ever, right? I'd love to, but I haven't. However, just investigating and reporting on this and writing the book has absolutely cost me in terms of people take me a little bit less serious than they did before the book because of my interest in it. And I think that's a real shame.
It is.
And also it's a bit hypocritical, really, on the basis that 95% of the population of this planet believe in a deity of some kind, whether that's God or whatever religion they subscribe to. And if you say that, nobody bats an eyelid. And you're believing in a supreme being where we don't have any photographic evidence or any forensics or sworn affidavits or testimonies. We don't have any of that. But nobody thinks those people are crazy or unhinged, which is good, because I think religion is a wonderful thing. I can get behind anything that says don't kill people and murder people and steal off people.
Mm-hmm.
I think it can be a good thing. And I would never make or poke fun of that, and quite rightly so. But the point I'm trying to make is, if you believe in a supreme being where there's no evidence, and yet I wouldn't say castigate me, but you look at me like I'm a bit unhinged when I'm coming up with you with statements and photographic evidence and some forensics, and you have nothing. But I have to believe in what you are saying, that there's a supreme being, and with no evidence, but I've got evidence, but I'm nuts. And I think the hypocrisy, it does kind of make me laugh. I mean, I have got my own, beliefs, but I feel in the police, I am now taken a little less seriously. It's Inspector Teague, it's the UFO guy, but it's just a passion, and everyone's got a different passion. I was once told by a senior officer, I think it'd be best if you investigate something else, how UFOs had nothing to do with the police, at which point I did quote a few criminal offences to him. So I quoted kidnapping, which is the unlawful taking and carrying away of a person against their will. I quoted false
abduction phenomenon.
Yeah, false imprisonment, the unlawful and intentional reckless restraint of a person's freedom of movement against their will without legal justification. And we've got Section 47 of the, assault, which is assault occasion accidental body harm, results in some injury to the victim. And the injury doesn't have to be permanent or serious, but it must have a trivial or a psychological harm type of effect. All of those criminal offences, by definition, fit the reports that many witnesses have come forward for in regards to abductions. But as soon as you say the perpetrator might be something otherworldly, we don't look at it. And don't get me wrong, Willie. I'm thinking I don't see us jumping up into a jet to go and find out who's done this and bring them down before a court trial, because whoever these people are or whatever they are clearly far, far more intelligent than us. But we should at least acknowledge that this is happening. And let's say 1,000 cases of UFO abduction were reported, and let's say 999 of them were not true or found to be not true for mental health illness, or the guy had just got it wrong, or girl had just got it wrong. But let's just say one of them was true. Well, if only one of them needs to be true for the case to be made out that this is happening, and I think this is happening, and I think it's happening all over, not just the UK, but different countries throughout the world, where citizens are being taken by the pilots of UFO craft for, I don't know, whatever purpose. And I think the governments know this. I genuinely believe they do know this. And I believe they won't admit it, because after all, how do you admit to the people that you're supposed to be looking after that there are people coming, or life or from wherever, and taking our citizens? So there's the fear that would cause. And then, of course, there's the religious connotations whereby, well, God created man in his image. Well, hold on a second. We are not the toughest kid on the block. There's life forms. So if we were created in God's image here, why has he created life forms? And who's to say how many species there are that are more intelligent than us? Also, it does bring into the arena the religious connotations of it as well. It's such a fascinating subject.
No, it is. It is. And this is one of the subjects, and you hit something, a very good point, when it comes to the abduction phenomenon. I've always said, I got a problem with, the problem that I get with the abduction phenomenon is when other people are not looking, is where you're in the sanctuary of your home, okay, in your bedroom, and you're being taken, or you're being taken away from your home, okay, and now whoever it is, these beings, whatever you want to call them, are putting their hands on you, okay. What is that considered? To me, it's considered kidnapping and assault, okay. I mean, that's in other places, but that would be a crime, correct? Like you're saying.
Although I imagine some people would go willingly,
Yes.
If someone said, hop on this and all, it depends what happens to you when you go, doesn't it?
Well, I've had people tell me, the experiences have been good and they wouldn't mind going through the experience again. Okay? But that's not everybody too, that's not everyone. Okay, I'm not saying that the abduction phenomenon is evil or anything like that. I also got my opinions on that, but it's a real phenomenon. You know, it is a real phenomenon. Missing time is a real phenomenon. It's a real thing. You
It is,
know,
yeah.
and people are afraid to talk about it. You know, it's like the taboo. But like you hit the nail on the head where the authorities, how are they going to explain this if it's admitted? You know, like you said, we're under the blanket of the protection of local law enforcement and the military, you know? So how would that look? Where US military is supposed to be, you know, the Air Force is, you know, supposed to be watching the skies, and now, you know, you're admitting that this phenomenon is happening,
Well,
and what are you doing about it?
well, we would be admitting, well, the United States certainly, most powerful nation in the world,
Yeah.
that they are not the masters of the air, and there's craft out there that would tie their most advanced military jets in absolute knots. You know, I mean, we're a clever species, and we've built some wonderful craft that can, you know, max 7 or 8 with people in it.
Hmm.
But we've created, I think the Russians, unfortunately it's a nuclear missile, but it's called a hypersonic glide vehicle, and I think that does Mach 21, which is about 21,000 miles an hour. So when I hear these stories about UFOs and it was going at thousands of miles an hour, the speed alone, to me, that will never prove that it was a UFO, something built from non-human,
Hmm.
patterns. Because we are a clever species. But for me, I get really interested when the cases say things like the craft, was going at thousands of miles an hour, and then it did right angle movements, up, down, side to side, motions that would break any pilot's neck. I mean, maybe there isn't a life form in it. Maybe it's an equivalent of one of their probes, because we see different UFOs, don't we? Triangular
Or
shaped,
drone.
saucer shaped,
Hmm.
cigar shaped, and I think that there are different craft for different things. Like we have jets, commercial aircraft, crop dusters, all sorts, and each plane's for a different thing. I think they have different craft for different thing. And who is to say that certain species don't favour one craft over another? Because why would we? Why would there just be one other species out there that's coming? I mean, it might be, but I think that probably the Milky Way in the universe certainly is. I think it's probably teeming with life. When you've got in the Milky Way, and I know I'm harping on a bit here, but when you have a Milky Way that's got between 100 to 400 billion stars, are you telling me
Just in that galaxy
just in
of
that
the
gap?
many.
Yeah. Well, so they say now they believe that there are in excess of 10 trillion galaxies. So a bit of maths for you. If you take, let's be unkind and take the lowest number. Let's take 100 billion and we times that by 10 trillion. That gives you 1 septillion, right? So that's on with 24. Are you trying to tell me, and those are just the number of stars. We haven't even thought about the planets that orbit the stars, which there'll be
Correct.
even more. Statistically speaking, we cannot be it. And I think most people acknowledge that. I think where some of the naysayers in regards to ufology and UFOs being real, their argument would be, okay, I might buy that there's civilizations elsewhere in the Milky Way of the universe, but because of the great distances from other star systems here, they don't think that they've got the technology to go from their planet to ours because it would take so long. But I think those people are thinking in regards to our technology and how long it would take us with our technology to get from here to, I don't know, say the nearest star, Proxima Centauri. So that star is 4.5 light years away. However, that's if we travelled at the speed of light, which is 100 miles a second, not an hour, so 186,202 miles a second, which is 671 million miles an hour. Now, we can't do that. So for us to get to the nearest star, Proxima Centauri, would take us, I think it's 3,600 years. So we are so far
Yes.
behind the curve. Yeah, 6,300 years. So far behind the curve from whatever these things are that are coming here that is unbelievable.
No, it is. You know what? People don't have this concept of the speed of light. It takes a ray of light 8 minutes to get here from the sun.
Yeah. So the sun could have blown up
So
7 minutes ago. We wouldn't even know.
yes, yes, yes,
It's absolutely
exactly.
insane, you know.
It is. It is. It
Well,
is.
yeah.
No, but the many cases that you have that you had actual,
250 so far
yeah,
I've interviewed, but that's just UFOs.
Yes.
I started about a year ago to have officers contact me about paranormal cases and cases of the unexplained as well. I've probably got about 25 of those, but some of those, they do make the hair on the back of my neck stand up. They're also
No,
very interesting.
no, I wouldn't be surprised if you have also heard where you had a paranormal encounter where you saw where somebody reported a UFO also.
Yeah, I think sometimes people get them mixed up. You know, who is to say? But yeah, I think certain people attract these types of phenomena, especially when it was the paranormal. Some people, I believe, have a gift. They say that we operate on vibrations and vibrational speed. And I think sometimes when the environment is just right and when they're in a certain mood and where the environment is right in wherever the paranormal world is and whatever is in that paranormal world is in the right mood, I think sometimes the vibrations and the frequencies can just cross. And that's the time sometimes where people see, entities that
Yes.
have passed on or things that are in, a different plane of existence. And once again, before people try to cart me off to a padded room and lock me away for being mad for saying that I believe in the paranormal, what I would say to them is this: you cannot have it both ways. And what I mean by that is, again, going back to religion, if you believe in God, and let's say you look at the Bible, there are many occasions within the Bible where it mentions people being infected by demons, they've been possessed. There's
Yes.
a very famous part in the Bible where Jesus casts out a load of demons.
A legion. They call themselves
Yes.
Legion.
Because he asks the name and the demon says, well, we are,
We are many.
we are legion for women. And he casts them out to a herd of pigs, and the pigs run off a cliff and they all drown.
Yes.
So
Yes.
nobody bats an eyelid at that. It's in the Bible, so it must be real. The devil is mentioned in the Bible. The demons are mentioned in the Bible. You can, in the Quran, jinn are mentioned, which are also, they're equivalent of demons. It's in every other religion in regards to demons. They might be of a different name. So that it's accepted there. So I don't understand how people can accept it in religious terms. And then if somebody else says, I saw a ghost or I was possessed,
Yes.
or I'm a medium and I can talk to such and such. A lot of times we regard them as unhinged or they're crazy. But you don't bat an eyelid when it's in the Bible. Again, it's the hypocrisy. So
Yes.
you can't believe in one aspect of the Bible, which is, God and Jesus, without believing in the other aspect, which is, I guess, Satan, possession, devils, all that type of thing.
Correct. And there is light and darkness. There is good and
There is
evil.
yin and
You
yang.
work. Yes, that's right. And you work in a field where you see this firsthand. There is good, and there could be also good in people,
And
and there
bad.
also could be
It's
bad in
just
people.
unfortunate in law enforcement. You do,
Yes.
it's kind of the 80-20
Mm.
factor. You do with 80% of the
Yes.
baddies and
And
20%
slowly
of
the
the good people.
slowly people are just with the information age that we live in, are slowly coming around. With of course accepting that I have always said we live in a paranormal world. We really do. And I wanted to ask you, Roy, if there's certain areas in these reports. I know England is not a of course, like the United States, we have particular areas. Let's say, there's an area down called Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah.
Okay, there's many other areas where there have been the Hudson River Valley has been one of there's been a lot of UFO flaps. Okay, and of course, it's interesting to me. And you talk about the hypocrisy and all this, but England is famous for one of the most documented UFO cases ever. Which I know when we hit upon it a little bit. Rendlesham Forest. Okay, which you're not going to get a case that's more documented than that one. I
No,
believe.
I mean,
And it happened to happen in
Suffolk.
England.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Suffolk 1980 at the end of the year. So I know about it. I've read quite a few books on it, good books as well. There's one by Gary Heseltine I think is particularly good. Very, very good researcher and a former police officer on the shelf behind me. That's called Non-Human. Brilliant book. There's The Whole Perspective as well by John Hanson. My favourite book on it is You Can't Tell the People by Georgina Brunei, but they are great books. So I've got good knowledge of it. I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination. And to be honest, there's two reasons I never got involved in Rendlesham Forest. Number one, There's a lot of controversy surrounding it. A lot of the witnesses and a lot of the people that report on it seem to have fallen out. And I really didn't want to become embroiled in any of that.
Well,
And secondly, most importantly, is it's been written about so many times.
yes.
I don't think Roy Teague's going to bring anything new to the party.
Mhm.
So what I wanted to do is concentrate on new police sightings that had never been told before and bring them to life by writing about them. But it is a fascinating account. And for people that don't know, it's something that occurred over, some people say 2 nights, some 3, some 4, where some lights were seen over Rendlesham Forest near RF, Woodbridge and Bentwaters. Maybe something landed in the forest, maybe something landed at Capel Green. Non-human entities have been mentioned, people with missing time, all that type of stuff. But it was 1980, so you're talking 46 years ago. Well, some of the witnesses aren't with us here anymore. People
During the Cold War.
fade.
During the
Something clearly happened there. Whether that was extraterrestrial craft over the woodland and landing in it, or it was a military craft being tested, and it was so top secret that the airmen weren't told about it at working near Rendlesham. I don't know. It could have been a culmination of anything. I'm certainly not an expert on it. I wouldn't profess to be, but at the same time, I do think it's a really fascinating one. It's probably the biggest one in the United Kingdom.
Well, without a doubt, without a doubt. So when it comes to the hypocrisy, I mean, I get it, and that's why I brought that case up. We have spoken before. We did the recording, and I had asked you about the case of Alan Godfrey. And I know that case was right about the same time. Okay, 1980.
It was, yeah. It was. That was at Todd Morden, and that is the case where he's in his police car. I think he'd been sent out because there was a report of cattle on the road. And he'd gone out there, and whilst he's looking for these cattle there, he sees something in the road, and it's like a craft, and it's sort of like it's almost like a spinning top, from what I can recall from the drawing that made. But he was on duty in full uniform at the time in a marked police car, and the next thing is he remembers driving down the road, and this thing's gone, but there's some intimation that he was taken, and I think he had something like 35 or 40 minutes of missing time. I mean, I met Alan Godfrey at a conference, and he seemed like a lovely guy. Again, what cause would he have to make it up? Alan Godfrey's downfall, I'll tell you that now, was speaking about it publicly. So he went on to, in full tunic and police uniform, he went on to breakfast television in the United Kingdom, and he openly spoke about what happened to him. And again, there's a book about his experience written by, I think it's called Who or What Were They? And it was ghost written for him by someone called Jenny Randalls. It's a good book. It's interesting, gives it from his perspective. But in there, he mentions how he felt he was hounded out the police. So he just resigned, I think, after 11 or 12 years of service, and that was it. He was gone, but he believed he was pressured into resigning because of what happened to him and talking about it. And do you know what, Willie? And that was my thought about just getting involved in this subject. Would it cause me any problems? That was at the forefront of my mind. I don't mind people, making a bit of fun or the banter. But Alan Godfrey's not the only one that was hounded out of the police because of his belief in UFOs. So I'll give you another example. El Paso Reserve Deputy Sheriff Chuck Zukowski, right? And there was an El Paso County investigation, and it attributed a series of cattle mutilations to predators. Now, that deputy sheriff, Chuck Zukowski, he publicly challenged that online, and he said he believed it was to do with a UFO connection with cattle mutilations. On the 9th of February 2011, 2 Colorado deputy sheriffs turned up at his front door. They relieved him of his gun, his badge and his ID, and he was fired, in their words, for contradicting and being critical of official sheriff's office investigations in a public forum. So here you've got someone that's investigating the paranormal and UFOs, who's a deputy sheriff, who posts about it online or does podcasts. Maybe he would have at the time if they'd have been around. And they fired him. So things like that are at the back of my mind. But what I would say to anybody is I don't think anyone's passion should be their undoing. It doesn't harm anyone to investigate these things. It doesn't harm anyone to push back on official answers that are given. If you don't believe what the government are saying, you should be able to say, I don't believe that. I don't believe the reason for what John Smith saw or Fred Bloggs was this. I think it was this. You should be able to get into a debate and push back. Debate is healthy. The trouble is when you're law enforcement, you're part of the system and they don't like that. So being a serving officer and investigating claims of abduction and kidnapping by extraterrestrial biological entities isn't probably the most healthy thing you can do, shall I say, for your career, but it's worth doing in pursuit of the truth. I mean, when I joined the police, I was told we were seekers of the truth. It's all about the truth, and this is all we want. We want to find out about this phenomena. We want to know what these things are, and we should be able to talk about it. But they, I don't think, want that. So I am careful while still in service about what I say. And there is a lot more I could say, but I won't because I'm still in the office of constable. Maybe one day when I've retired, I might have a bit more to say about a couple of things, but that day isn't today. But you do have to be careful if you're in the police, serving officer, and you're talking about this subject and investigating it. And I will leave it at that.
And it's unfortunate because in England right now, let me see, I believe I saw a case happened maybe 5 or 10 years ago. Pilots that were flying to those isles in Brittany. You know, I believe there's some islands on the coast of France, I believe. And these are commuter planes that are flying back and forth. And they've encountered UFOs, okay? And they have reported it. And I believe they haven't caught a lot of the flack, you know, and it's been slowly, you know, it's being accepted, you know. And of course, you know, again, you see that hypocrisy when these planes are having these encounters, and we're talking about a commercial flight here, and some of these objects that could be so close, okay? They fly within so many feet of these passenger crafts, okay? And somebody reporting it or raising the alarm or some type of concern is going to get shut down. And it's unfortunate because it is going to, you know, I know it happens here. It still happens here.
It does
you know?
happen here.
Yeah.
Without going into too much detail, because this one cost me, I investigated a near miss of a UFO with a cargo plane coming to land at Birmingham Airport about 18 months ago. And I made some inquiries with the airport. Now, I can't do that in the capacity of a police officer because when I'm at work, I'm at work. And I can't use my position or police systems to investigate UFO reports or paranormal reports. I can't do that. So I can't use police systems. However, when I'm off duty, I can use the internet like anybody else, and I can send emails requesting information. And I did so about this near miss, asked for some CCTV, asked for some clarification, went onto Flight Radar. I could prove that this had happened. I've got some CCTV. I won't say where I got it from, but I did. And I got told to stop looking at that. And I think whether that was a UFO or not, what you're highlighting is a near miss of one aircraft or an object hitting another aircraft coming into land at a major international airport. And I was made to feel, I would use the word uncomfortable by continuing to investigate that. So although in the police, it opens doors in regards to witnesses that I can speak to. People will talk to me, especially if they're in the police, because we have the same job and it's a bit of a brotherhood. I will get those witnesses come forward. That's the plus side of it. The downside of being in the police and serving is that you can get shut down because you're worried about how it will affect your employment. So it's a double-edged sword. It is.
And it's a lot of pushback. You know, when it concerns your career, you know, and of course your reputation also. You know, it's tough. It's a tough spot to be in. You know, Roy, I wanted to ask you, and I know you're familiar with some of these cases in the United States also. I don't know what type of system, and you probably have a system that's very comparable to the system that's used here in the United States. I believe here it's 911, and in England it would be another 999. Are those systems, how long, I'm going to ask you this, how long they've been around, and are they recorded or monitored? Because what I want to ask you is, and I know you're probably familiar with this case, and I believe it's in Ohio. It started in a particular county in Ohio where a resident called about seeing a craft in their backyard and a huge light, and they had called the county sheriff, and This sheriff took the call. He came over. He saw the light, and he proceeded to call back to the dispatch and saying, "This is what I see," and he immediately started to follow it. And this conversation is recorded throughout the system, the 911 system, and it's fascinating because as the police officer is, of course, following this craft or this light, eventually he ends up taking, somebody down the line ends up taking a Polaroid picture of it. Okay, but this went on from one county to the other. So as the craft was going from one county to the other, it was being passed on. So as one officer, as we spoke offline, the differences here in the UK, when these officers, when they were pursuing this craft and went from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, it was just passed on. Okay, and somebody else will pick up. Are you familiar with that case? Because that entire case was recorded in the 911 system. So there's actual conversations within these.
Rings bells.
Yeah,
I've
and that
read
was
it,
my
I've read
question was.
I've read it online. Yeah.
Yeah, my question was, do you have a similar system in England? And if have you heard of anything similar that's been recorded in that system?
I mean, the 999 system. You have 911. Obviously, you mentioned earlier. We have the 999 system that has been around since forever in the British policing model. It's a very easy number to remember. 999. Well, in fact, that's actually not the number for the police. 999 is the number for their emergency services.
Yes.
When you ring 911, I think it's 911. What is your emergency? Ours is different. It'll be 999, and you'll hear which service do you require?
Okay.
Fire, ambulance, or police. So then you'll say police, and then whatever is that. If you ring it where I am, you'll get through to West Midlands Police, the force are serving. And then you'll speak to the policing operator. That system's been around for ages. I can tell you all the calls are recorded, the same as the non-emergency calls, which is 101, but they're all recorded and they're retained because for simple fact that what is recorded on those calls might provide valuable evidence to convict someone at court. If someone's been attacked, somebody could be being murdered, and that's the last time we ever hear their voice. And they might shout something that tells us who the offender is, or my house has been burgled and they've run off down such and such, and they're all recorded for evidential purposes, and also so we the police can improve as a service. As to have I heard those calls being made, police jumping on the radio saying I can see a UFO and I'm going over here to chase it now and this, that and the other. Yeah, I can give you examples, and I'll do them very briefly. There's a guy called Gary McHugh, and he works for West Midlands Police. Again, he won't mind me mentioning his name. He went to a big fight in the street in 2010 in the Birmingham area. And whilst this is going on, they're trying to quell it and calm it down. One of the agitators there suddenly shouts out, "What the hell is that?" Well, he shouts out something else, but I'm not going to repeat it on your podcast. And he points up in the sky. So everybody looks, and the officer and everybody there, like 25, 30 people in the street, have seen this. He described it as a J-shaped UFO. It was just hovering there watching this disorder, or just maybe wasn't aware, maybe it was just hovering there and didn't know what's going on, but it was there and it quelled and it brought an end to this emergency situation. So the officer gets on the radio and this thing flies off towards Birmingham Airport against the flow of the wind, I might add. It's only describes it as about as big as a car. And some other officers come towards and try and chase it towards the airport. But and I managed to speak to those officers as well, but it was lost sight of. I've known one where a guy was chased along the A19 about 2 or 3 in the morning by a UFO that he described as a sphere-shaped UFO, like a ball of fire, he described it as. And it chased him literally 4 or 5 meters from his car, and he said it was that hot, it was making the inside of the car unbearable. So it was to his side, but just up in the air a bit, sort of just, not far from the lights. So usually we, the police, we chase cars, don't we? Well, this thing was chasing them, and they wanted to get away from it. And this has gone on for 3 or 4 miles, this UFO chasing the police. And then what's happened is it's then shot off up the on, and it's been seen by police forces all up the north of England and then into Police Scotland, and it's been passed over the radio. So they all thought he was crazy when he rang it in, and then suddenly he wasn't, because he'd been seen by numerous of the police officers, and he the next day was taken to RAF Balmer, I think it was, and interrogated by the RAF, and then told just to never talk about it ever again. So there's a lot going on. It does happen. It's rare, but it does happen. But people tend not to shout about it on the radio because they the reputation and the stigma.
Oh, of course,
It does
of
happen.
course. No, you mentioned the A19. Would that be a stretch of highway or expressway or road?
Well, yeah, you call them eyes like the interstates, don't you? We call them motorways.
Yes, correct.
You call them freeways or whatever. The
Correct.
motorway. So,
Yes.
but a motorway is 3 lanes. So you'd say, let's say it was the M1. The motorway is, you'd say M1. If it's an A road, usually dual carriageway with 2 lanes. So the A19 is a 2 carriageway road, as in
Okay.
2 lanes going one way, 2 lanes coming back the other way.
All right. Okay, got it. Now, when I was in England, and I know we had shared a story with you, being in, spent about a month in Europe, and I happened to spend 2 days in England, in London. It was fascinating. But when I did take the ferry from Le Havre over to South Portsmouth, I think it is.
To
Southampton.
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 Yeah,
Excuse me, Southampton.
Southampton or
And
Portsmouth, one of the two.
yeah, and get on the car, of course, and get on the. I believe it was almost like a expressway or highway.
Yeah.
Right, as we would call it here. I couldn't help but notice the amount of cameras that were on that road. Okay.
There's a lot.
And yeah, I mean, I've under, going under some underpasses, okay, on the bridges, and the amount of surveillance I think that was there, and I'm talking about over 26 years ago, okay, when I was down there.
Yeah.
So my question is going to be, has there been anything picked up by some of these cameras also that you know of?
Well, there's 2 types of the camera. There's a normal camera that's recording all the time, I guess, that's on a big pole. That's recording. The cameras, a lot of the cameras are ANPR, automatic number plate reader cameras that are just designed to read the car number plate, so they're probably not looking up in the sky. Well, I know of police officers on the traffic unit that have caught UFOs on the traffic cam. Yeah, I know a guy who had a camera that was on his dashboard, and he took some photos of that, 12 photos, and he saw the photographs developed, and it showed like a craft underneath of it. The photographs were taken from him, and he was told he'd get them back. There was a lot of publicity about this incident because a lot of people saw this craft. He was interviewed about the paper, and they gave him the photographs back. But would you believe it? They gave him back. So they gave him back 8 of the 12, and all of those 8 were like blurred. And so the ones that showed the bottom of the craft, hey, they didn't come out. He's like, but I saw them. No, they didn't come out. And they blame that on I think they blame that on Mars. But he's like, look, Mars doesn't fly like a craft in the sky, and this, that, and the other. And so we have had a few officers capture stuff. We have yet to note an officer catching one on his body-worn video. That'd be great, that would. We have body-worn video on pretty much all frontline officers now. The same as they do in the United States. It's usually Axis or a different company.
Correct. Yeah, that's the same one you just mentioned.
Yeah,
Yes.
but a couple of times, yeah, it has happened.
Fascinating. And it's getting a little more difficult now, I believe, with technology, where everyone has a cell phone. Some of the best cameras, I believe, are probably right here on our phones.
Yeah.
And of course, in the surveillance state that we live in now, it wasn't like that, particularly here, but now it is more common here to see cameras in the interstate. Like myself, I have encountered a few, not many, but nothing like England, nothing like when I went to Amsterdam. I was really shocked when I was in Amsterdam, because in every corner, it just seemed, and I'm going to tell you that the night that I spent in Amsterdam, I didn't see one police officer, not one. It was odd.
Yeah.
And I said, wow, the amount of people that are here, okay, it's very busy, very bustling, okay, and I'm looking around, but every corner just had 2 or 3 cameras on it. And I was kind of like, okay, yeah, I get it. Now I see why I think nobody's going to get out of hand here, because, you're being recorded, you're being... But one question that I have for you, Roy, and I know doing the research on your book, did you happen to have or encounter trying to get some of this information? Over here we have, researchers will do, or anybody in the media, or anybody who's looking for some type of information, they're going to do a FOIA, which is a Freedom of Information.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have something similar in England?
Yeah.
Where you have to request?
We do. You have to request it. So it's the Freedom of Information Act. However, it only has to be adhered to by like local authorities or the police. So if you wrote to, say, a private company, like Birmingham Airport, for example, when I
Yes.
wrote to them, they just, no, we're not telling you.
Stonewall.
So
Yeah.
I said, well, just because you don't have to do something, you don't have to disclose something, can you? And it was just a wall of silence. But if you write to the police or the local authority, not only do they have to respond, they have to respond in a certain period of time. Whether you get the correct information back or not is another matter. I've done some FOI requests to Police Scotland, for example, a couple of months back, asking about a police helicopter, a journey from A to B. And they said, no, our helicopter didn't launch. And I said, well, I think you find it did, because if you look at Flight Radar and there's other various apps, it's right there. You can see it. You can track it on the radar. So I'll send it back, and then you get, yeah, we're very sorry. Yes, we did. But then you'll get limited information. They clearly didn't want to say that it was a police helicopter, but I'm thinking, well, you've got to reply. You're supposed to reply with the truth because, well, you're the police, and it's free information. So it's either one of two things. They're either being economical with the truth and telling some, as we say in the UK, some porky pies, lies, or the person who was given that Freedom of Information Act request just didn't do a very good job. You make that, and it's not the first time it's happened. So how many times have people put in these requests to be given information back that just simply isn't true? So, and I think sometimes, not the police, of course, but if an organisation doesn't want to tell you something, how are you going to know that they know something if they just write they don't? How are you going to know that? So you're heavily reliant on the honesty of the person that's taken that Freedom of Information request and has been allocated it to do the research that you want and to reply back to you with the correct details and the truth. And I don't think, from my experience, certainly, that always happens. And again, because I'm still serving the police, I don't want to push too much on that.
Understood. As far as the form itself, and I know that you mentioned that you have requested in writing, correct? Because it has to be in writing.
It has to be in writing, yeah.
Is there any particular way that these things are being, you have to request it? Is there any particular way that you have to word it? I know that here, from what I've been told, that filing for a FOIA, it's almost like it's an education in itself, because if you don't fill it out correctly.
Yeah, like sometimes people look for any excuse to knock it back.
Correct.
And one of the big reasons for knocking back a FOIA, as you say, is because you will get a reply saying your request will take more than the allotted hours that we allocate to these inquiries. And then you might have to pay some money or reword your FOIA. So I leave no ambiguity when I put them in. I will say, on this date at this time, this happened. I believe this is the police log number or the log number for whatever the company is, the local authority. I want to know, can you tell me why the helicopter was there, why your cars were there, how many staff, what did they see, is there any CCTV, can I listen to the tapes? All that type of stuff. A lot of times you'll be told no because it's private footage from John Smith, and you'll say, well, can I speak to John Smith? But they won't give you his details. So sometimes I think there's a deliberate attitude of just trying to make things awkward and difficult for you. If you're asking about difficult subjects, like UFOs or the paranormal, I imagine they don't get many of those requests unless something happens. Like if there was a report in the paper tomorrow, there's a UFO seen above, the London Eye, for example, and the police go, and they'll probably get like 50 Freedom of Information requests from 50 different people who are interested in the story. And I think it depends what other people have got that's available freely to look at online, how truthful they'll be. If there's no footage, they can say what they want, but if there's like 5 people with cameras who film something, it's pretty hard to deny. But yeah, you've got to get the wording right when you put in the request, and don't make it ambiguous in any way.
Now, you're in an advantage because, of course, it seems when you word that out, it's almost exactly like you would write a police report.
Well, I find less is
almost.
I find less is best, because if you ask for this, you'll get that's too long. No, so I'll just say, and I'll just and then the
short and sweet.
Short and sweet. Less is best. Yeah. Yes or no? Was that reported? Did you go? What was the result?
Correct. In your book, and the way it's concised, can you tell us a little bit about that as far as these reports are some of these experiences?
Yeah, so like I say, I interviewed 250 former or serving officers, and I put the best 75 most intriguing UFO accounts in the book. The criteria is very strict. It's either former or serving police officers. If you weren't, they're not in the book, right? Because I wanted the credibility of the witnesses in the book. So if you go through that book, flick through the pages and stop and open it up, you're reading about a police officer from the United Kingdom who's had a UFO encounter or an experience. The way I put them in the book was, initially I was thinking, should I put them in force order? Should it be, West Mids Police, then the Metropolitan Police, or Bedfordshire Police, Cambridgeshire Police? I didn't do that. I put them in date order, because then it's a chronological account through time as it moves on. From 1966, which was my first ever sighting that I took a witness account from PC Stenner, near Lulsgate Airport, which is now Bristol Airport, if anybody's never heard of that. And his police car was knocked out by a UFO whilst he was driving it. And his car came to a stop at the bottom of a hill, and then it appeared, and then it knocked out all the lampposts, the lights, and then it shot off, and then the lamppost came back on, and his car came back on. That was the first one report I ever took, until the last report I took. So all through the decades, and that was a guy who was another firearms officer, anonymous. That's Officer K, and he said he was in an area called Polesworth, which is near Tamworth, if anybody wants to know, in the UK. And he said he felt compelled to look up in the sky. It was almost like something was telling him to look up in the sky. And he was walking in his garden at the time, and he stopped, turned and looked up. And he said he saw in the sky only what he can describe as flickering in the sky. He described it as an old notice board from the 50s or 60s. Like, when you look at a train station, they've got the letters flickering round. Yes. He said it was like that in the sky. And clearly, whatever technology it was trying to hide a craft. He thought it was like a cloaking device that was mid-cloak, but he believes whatever was up there, it was a craft, cloaked, but it had wanted him to see it, and he doesn't know why. He described it as the Predator UFO. When you get the film The Predator, where you can see it, but you can't see it.
Right.
It was like that. And before, I guess, you think he's crazy, I did interview a guy a couple of weeks back who was up north, I forget where he was, near Bridlington, and he was locking a van up on a car park. And when you press the fob and you see the hazards flash because you've locked the vehicle? Yes. So he always looks and turns to see and make sure that the hazard lights flash. And as they did, he noticed something out the corner of his eye, and he described it as like, he said he couldn't understand why the fence was wavy, but the wave was moving along this green fence about 20 metres away from him. So he watched, and it was clearly obvious that it was some sort of, he described it as like a bubble, but with blurred edges, like the Predator on the ground that was about 7 or 8 foot tall and about 4 or 5 foot wide, moving along the fence until it then moved out the way and it was out of his sight. So you've got one in the sky, which is a craft, and you've got one down on the ground. So I did a lot of research on that, and this is a phenomena that's been reported all around the world. So, and just more interesting stories. Yeah. But you've got to be conscious of what I think it's called Fata Morgana, which is when hot air meets cold air, and it creates that haze that you see in the desert or on a road on a hot day.
Yes.
So you need to be sure that that's not what you're viewing. But both of these witnesses were like, no, absolutely not. It was not that. It was a structured craft, or it was something on the floor being disguised by some sort of cloaking device. So there's a lot of things going on out there that we don't quite understand. And I think because of them, a lot of people shy away from talking about them. But there are a lot of things in this world and beyond that we don't understand. And I think we should talk about them more and be open and not shy.
Oh, so true. So true. Roy, of course I mentioned to you, the Rendlesham case, but the amount of crop circles that have been reported in England, it's astounding. And I know that you're not going to get into that phenomena, but it's another phenomena that's been, some of the biggest reports and known reports, best known, have been in England.
Yeah, there's
which is another rabbit hole that.
You can start talking about that one, and it's till the end of time.
Oh yeah, of course. Roy, in closing, your book, and I know that it's out already.
It is.
I'm waiting for my
launched on the 2nd of July at 9 a.m. and by midday, I thought it'd sell a couple of hundred copies, but by midday, Amazon had ran out and it had sold 2,500 copies. So that shocked me. And it proves to me that there are people out there who are interested. I think the book has done well on the basis that it's a first. It's just police officers from the United Kingdom talking about UFO experiences. And it's because one of their own's talking to them. And I think it's so unusual that there's a niche with the book. And that's why it's been so popular. I don't know how many have been sold now, but obviously it's going to be more. But like I say, the number one goal, it's to get these stories out there so the public realise it isn't just them that are seeing it.
Mm-hmm.
You've got police officers seeing these things, good, credible witnesses, and the things that are seen above the skies of the United Kingdom and around the rest of the world, these things are real.
Yes. I know that the book is available on Amazon. It's probably going to be here for sure in Barnes & Noble. And your contact information and, of course, if anybody had any questions, how they could get in touch with you.
Yeah.
And, of course, your website. Of course, I'll be putting the description and all that on the description of the video when I upload it on YouTube, which will be on a Sunday at 7:30 a.m. here, local time, Eastern Standard Time.
Awesome stuff. Now, I haven't got a website yet, but I'm going to get one and work on one. And it's going to be called Policing the Unexplained. It doesn't exist yet, but it will in the next couple of weeks. In the meantime, or even after, as I say, I love to hear from people. Anybody, you don't have to be in the police or the military or any of the emergency services. I will guarantee a reply to anybody that emails me. And as I say, it's Roy Teague at blueyonder.co.uk. So RoyTeague at blueyonder.co.uk. And I'll always reply. But I love getting emails from people. Don't be shy. If you're thinking, should I? Then the answer's yeah. Send me an email.
No, Roy, thank you so much for your time. All right. And of course, accepting my invitation here to the Paradigm Matrix. I really appreciate it. And of course, to my listening audience, don't forget to like and subscribe if you like this content. And we'll be having shows once a week. And I'm looking forward to having you again, Roy, in the future.
And it would be my pleasure to come back.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank
you. And
you.
you have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to the Paradigm Matrix with your host, Willie Miranda. This has been the Paradigm Matrix hosted by Willie Miranda.